Good morning, and welcome to the online home of UUFS. We're so very glad that you've joined us here this morning as we rise together as a congregation to face all the challenges that have come our way. Many of us may be here this morning with heavy hearts, with sadness born from the headlines that besiege us daily. We mourn for the loss of truth that we see in the world around us. We ache over the injustices that are amplified in our current social environment. We fear for ourselves and for those we love, while at the same time experiencing a sense of helplessness in the face of all the challenges that confront us. We struggle to effectively respond to the seemingly intractable and clearly systematic racism within our institutions. We feel outrage at the senseless loss of life at the hands of those whose job it is to protect us. We painfully watch as the world in which we live, our environment, becomes steadily more degraded and injured by humanity's actions. And yet, we're here. We are together. We can find solace and solidarity with one another. We can draw strength from one another, rising together as a community whose sum is so much more than the total of its individual parts. Each of you, with your presence here today, makes us stronger. Each of you, with your individual wisdom, makes us wiser. Each of you, with your hearts carrying love and goodwill, makes our congregation more resilient. Thank you for being here. Thank you, and please know that beyond any shadow of a doubt, no matter who you are, no matter what you have suffered, no matter how broken or battered you may feel, you are welcome here. You are embraced here. You are with your family here. We'll begin our service this morning with the sharing of an encouraging video that reminds us to look at the good and look for the good and to not lose hope. Thank you for your patience as we bring that video up.
It's interesting that the things we cherish most are the same things we walk right by. They become so intertwined in the status quo that ultimately it becomes impossible to tell them apart from our day-to-day. That is, impossible until things change. Because as it turns out, that thing we call life, it has a say. There's a saying, you never really know what you have until it's gone. And sometimes it takes the most abrasive of reminders, the harshest of times, to help us recapture that perspective, to lift us up and show us what we had previously failed to see. And while our darkest moments test our strength, they push our boundaries, even transform our reality, they can also be the bridge that leads us exactly where we need to be. They remind us that sometimes it's not about how we spend our time, but who we spend it with. That quiet brings clarity, and the world can spin so fast that we forget to think about our place within it. It reminds us how humanity is bigger than the sum of its parts, and it takes just as much energy to build up as it does to tear down. It reminds us that no matter where we live, what we speak, or who we pray to, we're not so different after all. It reminds us that there is so much more good in this world than evil, so much more love than hate, and so much promise for tomorrow. Someday we'll look back on this moment with the lessons we've learned, the hardships we've faced, and we will be reminded of the miracle that is the human spirit, unwavering in its resolve, unbreakable at its foundation, stronger than we could ever comprehend. See, sometimes it's hard to look around and find a reason to be optimistic, to understand or comprehend why. But what we'll find is that if we look hard enough, immersed in the uncertainty, the disruption, and in some cases, the tragedy, there's something to be gained. A tiny candle flickering in the night that will eventually grow to light our way. Because that road to tomorrow is paved with hope. There are pages unwritten, stories untold, and a new chapter to begin.
John will be lighting our chalice today, and our chalice lighting words are adapted from those written by Paul Sprecher.
We light this chalice for the web of life which sustains us, for the sacred circle of life in which we find our place, for the sky above us and the water below us, for the earth which is our home, and for the interconnectedness of all living things.
Our reading this morning is by Susan Ensweiler. Imagine yourself on a wide, flowing river in a small boat. You are one little speck of being in a wide expanse of water, bordered by rocky cliffs, towering trees, and bright blue skies. Ahead of you are boulders and white water rapids, but also calm pools and sandbars for picnics. Around you are other little specks of being, each one a person isolated in their own small boat, just like you. But together, all of you form a flotilla, and you will journey down the river together, guiding each other around the boulders, rescuing each other out of the white water, enjoying the calm of the still pools and picnics on the sandbars. May your journey through life be the same, surrounded by friends and loved ones who will sustain you through the hard times and rejoice with you in the good times until you reach the shore. As our congregation continues to adjust to our new circumstances and to transition to online means of staying connected, we are asking that for now, our Wednesday Zoom meetings serve as the place where we share our joys and sorrows with one another. And while we cannot currently replicate all of the important aspects of an in-person service, we can still hold fast to some of our traditions. And one of them is the sharing of the people, things, events, and circumstances for which we're grateful. Today, gratitude goes out to our leadership, our board and our minister, who work so hard and do so much behind the scenes to hold our little congregation together. Thank you. While your work may sometimes be invisible, it is never unappreciated. It's a privilege now to introduce our speakers today, Suze Southern and Matt Heim, whose talk is entitled, Restoring the Wicomico, building community. The One Water Partnership comes to the shore. A brief bit about each of them. First, Matt. Matt directs the Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake's One Water Partnership Program. He grew up on Maryland's Eastern Shore and studied environmental history with a research focus on the waterways of the southern Delmarva Peninsula as a graduate student. He has worked as an environmental advocate and educator for over a decade, most recently leading a highly successful campaign against the offshore drilling in the Mid-Atlantic region with the nonprofit organization Oceana. The underlying motivation for much of Matt's work in the environmental field has come from a place of faith and from a belief that stewardship is a moral obligation that we all share. He is excited to be leading the One Water Partnership program as it expands through the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Our second speaker today, Sue Sutherland, is an AmeriCorps member with the Wicomico Environmental Trust, focusing on support of the Wicomico River Creek Watchers and the Interfaith Environmental Outreach. A Salisbury native, she is passionate about our local environment and the Chesapeake Bay watershed. She completed her undergraduate education at UMBC and is moving to Swanee, Tennessee with her husband to attend seminary to be an Episcopal priest. She plans to make the most of her time left in Maryland until she leaves at the end of July. Now, please join me in welcoming Matt and Suze as they share their work with the Wicomico Environmental Trust and the Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake to protect and restore the Wicomico River. Pay close attention as they will be describing opportunities for congregations like UUFS to get involved in this important movement. Suze and Matt, the room is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I've never given a presentation over Zoom before, so this is new for me and for everyone, so bear with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen because I've got a presentation, and then I'll go ahead from there. Okay. Bear with me, folks. Present. Okay. Here we go. All right. And thank you, Jen, so much for that introduction. Again, I'm Sue Southern. I'm the AmeriCorps member with Wicomico Environmental Trust. And I just wanted to bring a message of hope, again, continuing from your lovely words that we had before this, and kind of give you a couple opportunities in this time where we feel so helpless, that we have so much work to do and we feel like we can't do anything right now. I would like to just come before you and give a couple opportunities for you to actually get involved on both an individual level and a congregation level too. So we're going to start off with the Wicomico River Creek Watchers, which is the bread and butter program that WET provides. And first, I just want to quickly acknowledge our funding partners. I'm not going to go through each one of those, but just to acknowledge all of them real quick. And then the next, we're going to go ahead and dive into what Creek Watchers is. Essentially, Creek Watchers exists as a force of grassroots volunteers who come as citizen scientists, and they collect data from our local waterways to provide information on how the Wicomico River watershed is actually doing. What is the health? It's a volunteer base. They are trained by WET, and then they go out and they collect their data, which is then added on to the community of sharing data and is used to kind of assess how we're doing as a community taking care of our watershed and our waterways. That ultimately goes to the Chesapeake Bay. Okay, so again, just the strategic goals of creek watchers, kind of participating in this restoration of the Wicomico River. It's really important. You know, it may seem kind of simple and small, collecting a canister of water, writing down some facts about what you see in your sampling site, but it actually does go pretty far and is really important. The data actually is compiled at a lab, environmental science lab at Salisbury University. And so students and staff help out with that. And then that data is ultimately passed on to Horn Point Lab and is used at a statewide basis for information about how our watershed is doing. So that education piece is also really important too, because once we have the data, we know what we're talking about. And hello, Judy. That's a lovely picture of you there with your water sample. I just included this because I thought the picture was really cute. And it shows some good community involvement even from your UUFS congregation. So again, just emphasis on the citizen scientist aspect. These are all just people in our community who wanted to be involved and wanted to collect some water samples and look at water quality and be involved with the restoration of our waterways. These are just a couple of the parameters that they actually use in terms of collecting data. So the water clarity, temperature, wind speed, rainfall, tide levels, and other environmental observations. So for example, at your site, you may see there's a lot of trash in this area. You know, they may write that down to pass along to the lab. It may be important information. So again, just emphasizing why we monitor. It provides a roadmap to what's next. Once we have the data, how can we move forward? And quality scientific data, again, they're trained volunteers. Their data is scientific and valid, verifying pollution reduction efforts, and getting involved with the community. How much can we educate the community on what we've found, and how can we pass along our information to do the most good? This is a map of the actual sampling sites that we have. I don't know how well, it's kind of tiny print, but again, you know, the season begins the second Tuesday of mid-March through November. We have had a couple of, unfortunately, some cancellations of sampling days due to COVID-19 and trying to keep everybody healthy. But we've started back up again. So that will alter the data slightly, but we're trying our best with freezing samples and just kind of doing what we can with what we have. Yeah. Okay, so I have just, you know, summarized the 2018 Creek Watchers Report, which is a report that's written every year based on the data collected. And this is publicly available for you. And I know you probably can't click on that link there, but I can share it in the chat if anyone's interested in reading the full report. Just some parameters summary that I found without getting too much in the weeds of everything. But of course, if you're interested in this kind of environmental science, it's really interesting to read. And again, we are currently finishing up the 2019 report. As you can imagine, it's taken a little bit longer to complete just based on everything that's going on, but that will be available this summer and will be posted on our website. So if you're interested in that, just keep a lookout for that on the website. So I can send that link in the chat if anyone's interested. And just to close out my portion of the presentation with my favorite quote from Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So again, just tying back to the beginning, I just wanted to offer some opportunities for you to participate in environmental stewardship on an individual level, but also on a community level in your congregation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt, and he's going to take it away from there.
Right. Thank you, Suze. We appreciate that. And I just want to emphasize too, again, just how critically important the Wicomico Creek Watchers program is towards the effort to restore the Wicomico River and in turn the Chesapeake. You can't make a path forward until you know where you are. So if you're looking for a way to get involved, it's a really great volunteer opportunity. On a personal level, it's really cool to get out and see the same piece of nature on a regular basis and see all the different changes that occur and make friends with the creatures that live in that little neck of the woods. So if you're looking for a way to get involved and spend some time outdoors and really help out in the effort to restore the Chesapeake, that's definitely a great program to get involved in. Before I start today, I just want to acknowledge and take a moment to reflect on what a tremendously challenging and painful week this has been. Beyond what's going on in the news right now, earlier this week we hit 100,000 lives that have been lost to coronavirus. That's a number that's been disproportionately represented and impactful of minority populations, of economically disadvantaged populations, some of which right here at home, workers who are on the front line, making it possible for us to go to the grocery store and have the convenience of purchasing our meat. There's folks that are risking their lives every day to make that possible for us. To have that week close out with what we saw, the essentially murder, it was a murder of an African-American male, once again at the hands of the police. It's a tough week. It's a really tough week. And I just want to take a moment to reflect on that. Us in the environmental field, one of the questions we wrestle with all the time is where do we fit? And particularly during weeks like this, in which there's just so much going on, there's so much injustice. Our work is important, but where do we fit in a week like this? So I just want to take a moment just to quietly reflect on the wounds that we're all feeling, that our country is feeling, and for those of us that pray, to take a moment to just pray that those wounds will continue to heal and that we'll find a good path forward through all of this. Miss your gong, John. It's the best way to come back from a moment like that. It's always a challenge, especially for someone like me who loathes awkward silences. I mentioned that it's difficult in the environmental field. I mean, I've been a part of numerous conversations about where do we fit when it comes to justice, when we have these issues that are going on, when the conversation is focused, rightfully so, on racial justice and economic justice. And it's a big question to wrestle with, but I think it's relevant to what I was planning to present today, that I'm altering slightly in the introduction here, because I think it's important to contextualize and frame where does this all fit. So the best place for me to answer that is on a personal level. I can share my thoughts on it, and hopefully they relate to you. And I'll just start freely too by checking my privilege at the door. I am a white male who grew up in a middle-class household who doesn't know or has never experienced what a lot of folks are experiencing every day. But the way I sort of see where we fit in the picture of things is that we're all working to fight injustice, and that what we are working towards is a shift in our culture. And by we, what I mean is the people who are working for immigrant rights, the people who are working for racial justice, the people who are working for environmental restoration. Our shared theme is that the way we are living right now, the society that we've built, the culture that we have created, isn't healthy. It's not healthy for the environment. It's not healthy for people of color. It's not healthy for the planet. It's not healthy for a lot of people. And what needs to happen is we need to open our eyes, and we need to work towards a way that we can create a better future that we might not see in its entirety, but ripples go a long way. And if we can, in our little lives and in our corner of the world, make positive ripples, those ripples can turn into big waves. And I think one of the things that I always try to remember in times like these is that there's a lot of pain that comes with birth. And I really feel like we're living through a tremendously painful time. But I try to remain hopeful that out of this pain and out of this strife, we're going to end up in a good place. So the One Water Partnership. What is the One Water Partnership? So many of you know me. I feel like, I don't know if you're a fan of The Simpsons, is it Troy McClure that always comes on, and you might remember me from such films as How to Save the Atlantic from Offshore Drilling, or so I think a lot of people on this call know me, and they know me pretty well. And I'm really excited to be coming and joining you today from a new position. I'm currently working as the director of the One Water Partnership Program with an organization called Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. And as was mentioned in my biography, I've worked in the environmental field for over a decade now. I've done a lot of really tremendous work. Through it all, I've really felt that, one, I came to the environmental field kind of through a basis on my spiritual beliefs that we should be taking care of the earth, but also in taking a look at like what I've chosen sort of as my field, my passion, my ministry of working towards the environment. The best way to really make the changes we need to make is to move the culture. And one of the most fundamental pieces of our culture are our faith communities. You know, they're where we go on Sundays. They're where we talk about these really important issues. They help people process these issues. They help people understand the decisions that need to be made. And I've always been interested in working with the faith community. I've worked with the Wicomico Environmental Trust to start the Wicomico Interfaith Partners, which was a foundational model for a One Water Partnership, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So when the opportunity came to join Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake and to lead this program, I felt like it was an opportunity I could not pass up. It has not come without its challenges. I will admit that. For those of you who are involved in the board at UUFS and know how like working in a committee and things like that is challenging. You know, working in the One Water Partnership and working to build a coalition of faith communities and coming together definitely has its challenges, but the rewards are just incredibly tremendous. So I have a video that I wanted to show you to kind of introduce the One Water Partnership, and then I'll share with you a little bit of the background and the history of what we've done so far and where we're headed and some opportunities for UUFS to get involved. So I think Suze has the play button for me. Cool.
I realized I was muted. I apologize.
I can't see it on my screen. You might need to share screen again.
The Chesapeake Bay Water.
You?
There you go.
Can you see it again?
Yeah, we can see it. You're going to make it full screen, but we can see it.
We can do this. Okay.
The Chesapeake Bay watershed has long struggled with impaired waters, algae blooms, and loss of native species and forests. Over 25,000 faith communities call this watershed their home. Imagine the potential for improvement if we all took action and worked together.
Your congregations have made a commitment to fulfill One Water Partnership's goal of igniting and equipping the faithful to restore our shared waters.
One Water Partnership works with congregations of all faiths to restore and protect their local watersheds.
I'm elated to be able to stand here today as we come to affirm that we want to take care of that which God has given us.
Well, it looks like our video may have.
What we're here to talk about today. The program is funded from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is funded through a grant through the EPA.
The first group of congregations to work in the One Water Partnership is an affirmation that you share this vision with us.
Today, Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake is leading an Interfaith Nature Walk. We can talk about reconnecting with nature, and we can read about it, but our actual experience of being in the natural world enhances what our faith teaches each of us about caring for creation.
We're dependent on nature for everything, so I feel an imperative to try to preserve it.
It has no boundaries, it has no denominations, it has no religion. It's all about the stewardship of the earth, because it's not just for us, it's for those who come after us.
And one of the things that we are dealing with right now on a massive level is urbanization and impervious surfaces, creating stormwater runoff that is entering into the natural river systems and into the waterway. We've had a few sinkholes open up in Baltimore City, and those repairs end up costing the city close to $7 million.
In the Jones Falls One Water Partnership, 13 congregations are installing rain gardens, cisterns, or conservation landscaping. 18 are planting trees, and 35 are leading educational awareness programs for their communities.
There's a massive amount of work to be done to improve the health of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and faith-based communities can be instrumental in doing that.
Today we're at Shrine of the Sacred Heart in Mount Washington. We're going to do a stream clean. We're right by the Jones Falls and Western Run, so we're right at two streams that flow into Chesapeake Bay, Inner Harbor. It's a great place to clean up and keep stuff before it even hits the harbor.
This sort of a project of cleaning up the stream is something that people of all ages can participate in. I believe that God gave us this beautiful planet, and that it's our responsibility to take care of it and to take care of everything on it.
What we do with water matters as a spiritual matter. If we misuse water, if we abuse water, if we pollute water, that goes against the moral imperative for us to make sure that there is enough for everybody on earth so that they can live.
Suze, can you go to the next slide, please? And just keep it up on your screen. Great. So the One Water Partnership, just to kind of give you kind of a rundown of what you saw there, a little bit of the history and what's gotten started. So the One Water Partnership is it's a program that looks to build networks of faith communities coming together. I like to say there's three pillars to the One Water Partnership. There's faith communities, there's environmental nonprofits like the Wacomico Environmental Trust in Baltimore, Blue Water Baltimore. And then we work also with local governments. So each local government in the Chesapeake region, they have to put together plans for restoration work to help restore the Chesapeake. So the three kind of pillars of our partnership are congregations, environmental nonprofits, we call them sometimes technical partners, and our government entities within each region. And we look to build these hubs in small local watersheds. So a lot of you are probably familiar with NIMBYism, or not in my backyard. I call this a BIMBY program. It's because it's in my backyard, right? People are much more motivated to come and restore the creek that runs through their backyard or the river that runs through their community than the Chesapeake Bay, which might be hundreds of miles away in some communities where we're starting to work up in Pennsylvania. And so the idea is that we want to work with congregations to empower you all to start environmental education programming at your congregations, to look for ways that you can install demonstration projects at your congregation that would demonstrate ways of remediating storm water runoff, improving the environment through increased native habitats, and to help you find ways to get out into the community more. And we sort of see that as a symbiotic relationship, and that as we help you develop these ministries, hopefully that helps draw people towards your communities as well. In addition to all of that, that helps, restore the local waterway, in this case, the Wicomico River. We're reducing the amount of runoff and pollution, increasing the amount of habitat for native species like bees and birds and things like that nature. And then also part of our work is Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. Our mission is to be the messenger and the connector. We don't do a lot of that education work and a lot of that restoration work. And so what we try to do is find ways to leverage grant funding to help organizations like the Wicomico Environmental Trust or the Lower Shore Land Trust down here on the Lower Shore increase their capacity to work with local organizations and local congregations. And so what we're trying to do is leverage our Chesapeake watershed wide. Right now we're working primarily just in Maryland, but we're looking to expand into Delaware and Pennsylvania in the near future to help bring resources to local communities, to help congregations improve their environmental programming at their congregation, to get involved in the One Water Partnership, and to help local organizations and governments find ways to get their message out and their resources out to the general public as well. So some examples of projects that have happened, we've got some photos up here. This is an example. I'm sure most of you are familiar with rain barrels. If not, basically when water comes out of a gutter and goes really fast into the waterway, it can carry a bunch of silt in it. It can often, if it's coming off the roof in the summertime, it'll be warmer water than what's in a creek. And so if that's going straight into a creek, that can create some issues for fish and wildlife. And so basically what rain barrels do is help capture water coming off of a roof surface, slow it down, and then you can use that water for watering your plants, preferably native plants, around your congregation. So this is a workshop that was led by a congregation. I believe this congregation was in Baltimore. I think this was funded through a grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust, which I will talk about in a little bit. And so this congregation was able to receive money from the Chesapeake Bay Trust to purchase a bunch of rain barrels and lead a rain barrel workshop at their congregation. We can go to the next slide, Suze. This is an example of a congregation that was putting in native plants at their congregation to, this is a pollinator garden that was being installed at St. Luke's. So you can see they have a rain barrel in the back there too that they were able to paint and put a gorgeous picture on it. So that's another example of a project a congregation led. Okay, Suze. It's not just projects in the ground and things like that. We also work with congregations to develop educational programming. So, if UUFS would be interested in hosting a educational program about restoring the environment or ways to get involved, there's things that can be done that way as well. We also work with congregations to help them found green teams. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. Go ahead, Suze. So where are we expanding? So just a little bit of the history. So the One Water Partnership was initially started in Baltimore around the Jones Falls watershed. Here locally, IPC started working with the Wicomico Environmental Trust about 5 years ago and got a group started called the Wicomico Interfaith Partners for Creation Stewardship. That group has been meeting regularly monthly and has hosted a number of educational and outreach events here in Salisbury for over those 5 years. That model of the Wicomico Interfaith Partnership was actually used to help inspire and get started the One Water Partnership. So the One Water Partnership was piloted in Baltimore. It had a tremendous amount of success working with congregations to get involved and to install restoration projects. And so in 2019, Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake was awarded a very generous grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to take that model and expand it to other regions of the Chesapeake, to one, see how it works in different types of environments and different types of communities, and two, to see if we can create a model that can be replicated even further within the Chesapeake watershed and even beyond. So where we are currently working to expand is we're expanding what we were doing in Baltimore to include Gwynns Falls and the Jones Falls. We're working in Anne Arundel County, Harford County, Wycomico County, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So within each of those, we call them hubs. We've identified local partners to sort of serve as the foundation. So here in Salisbury, we're working with the Wycomico Interfaith Partnership for Creation Stewardship, which is a project of the Wycomico Environmental Trust, who is also a partner. The Lower Shore Land Trust is working very closely with us, and then we're also working with the City of Salisbury and Wycomico County to help identify what are the best projects for congregations to work on, what are the major needs of the community when it comes to restoration and environmental outreach. And we're hoping that we'll be able to expand our Lower Shore hub here in Wycomico County to include, right now we're working primarily on the Wycomico River. We're hoping to be able to expand that to include the Nanticoke and the Pocomoke River in the very near future. Can you go to the next slide, Suze? So how can UUFS get involved? There's a couple of different points here. And Suze, why don't you just run through them all and I'll talk about it as they come up. So the first thing is what IPC, and IPC, I use acronyms a lot, I apologize. It's a fault of the environmental community. IPC is Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. So that's the organization I work for. We have two major programs. We have the One Water Partnership, which is our outreach and restoration wing. And then we have another program called our Faithful Green Leaders Training Program. And what the Faithful Green Leaders Training Program does is work with congregations to help them learn the skills and the knowledge that they need to run effective environmental programming at their congregation. It's a new program. It was just getting launched in 2019 before COVID-19 hit the scene, or in 2020, excuse me, before COVID-19 hit the scene. And initially, our plan was we were going to host one-day trainings in all of our hub regions. The one in Salisbury was planned to be in June. It's not happening. So what we've been able to do, though, I think that, and I actually think this is actually going to end up helping us in the long term, is we've turned that training into an online training. And so we have 2 sessions of Green Team training coming up this summer, which, Suze, I think if you click a few more times, the dates show up at the bottom there. Yeah, there we go. So the session 1, and I'll share this via email, John. It'll be coming to you and Judy through WIPCS on Monday. So you'll have that you can share with everybody. Session 1 will be June 18th, 19th, and July 9th. Session 2 will be August 13th, 20th, and 27th. A couple really good things that come out of this. I like to describe that this is more of the how than the what, right? So it's not going to be, these are the things you can do at your congregation, go install a rain barrel, go install a pollinator garden, things like that. This is how do you develop your messaging? How do you recruit volunteers? How do you develop a succession plan? How do you fundraise? How do you, the hows that come with it. What's really great about that is while we are focused on environmental messaging and developing these programs as a green team, those are transferable skills to any type of ministry or outreach that you're looking to build. Because UUFS is in one of our One Water Partnership hub regions, there's also a little bit added incentive if you all were interested in attending. The training is designed for teams, so we would encourage if UUFS wanted to participate that you would come with at least 3 or more people to the training, preferably to the same sessions, because there's breakout sessions where you all will have a chance to kind of put the minds together and talk about some of the items discussed in the curriculum. But if UUFS were to attend and then sign IPC's Partner Congregation Pledge, which I can share with John, so I'll have a copy of that as well. There's $500 available to help start and support a green team at UUFS. So that's a really great opportunity to help provide some financial support for the ministry or for the projects. There's other ways to get involved too, and UUFS was on the way to some of this also before COVID-19. So one of our big goals is we want to work with congregations to install restoration projects, because 1, that helps the Bay. 2, having a restoration project at a congregation like UUFS or other congregations gives the public a chance to see what an alternative is to your standard green lawn, the importance of native habitats, why rain barrels are important, those types of things. It's a really great opportunity to get messaging out to a larger public. So we have funding available to help congregations identify what types of projects are available or possible at their congregational site, and then to work with those congregations to apply for grant funding to install those projects. And we've been able to raise, I believe it's over $2.5 million over the last 3 years for congregations to install projects through One Water Partnership work. So the first step towards having one of those projects, moving towards one of those projects, is a site assessment, which is a free service that we provide in partnership with the Lower Shore Land Trust. And basically the Lower Shore Land Trust can come out, we walk around the building, and we identify, you know, a rain barrel would work really well right here. You have a great spot for a potential rain garden here. This is, these are the possible projects that could be pursued at your site. And then we have funding to continue to meet with your congregation to help identify what's the project you want that makes the most sense for you, and funding to help you apply for grant funding to install those projects. What's great is right now there's an opportunity through the Chesapeake Bay Trust to apply for these types of projects. The deadline for that grant application is August 4th. The program is called their Outreach and Restoration Program. That funding can be applied for directly by a congregation. The funding that's available is up to $70,000, depending on what the project's for. It can be used for education too. So things, you know, if UUFS wanted to lead or a congregation wanted to do some sort of educational programming, there's funding available for that to bring in a speaker. It can also be used to fund congregational expenses, including salary, that's associated with those outreach events and the project. So it's a really great opportunity, particularly in these challenging times. If there was already a motivation or an intent to pursue something, an environmental project or outreach programming or things like that, it's a great opportunity to apply for some funding to help support that and to bring some money into a congregation during these challenging times, I'm sure. And like I said, we can support UUFS through the whole process, through the One Water Partnership. So that's sort of where we are in a nutshell. Our plan for the spring was to host a number of outreach events where we were going to introduce the One Water Partnership broadly to the community. You all are the first ones to get to hear my spiel. Because of COVID-19, we haven't had a chance to get out, but I was really excited of all the congregations in Salisbury to launch this off with. I'm super excited that this was the one that I got a chance to do it. And I would love to work with you all to help you recruit a green team, if that's something that would interest you, and to work on any kind of projects that you might be interested in as well. In the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I got to say about that. Yes, here's my contact information. John has it. We can distribute it. And like I said, we'll be sending out an email with information about our green team training. If it doesn't come out by Monday, it will definitely come out by Tuesday. We're really burning the midnight oil to try to get all of this stuff together on the fly.
Okay.
Thank you both so much, Suze and Matt, for all that information. I think that's given us quite a bit to think about and process, and look forward to getting involved. You've got a lot of momentum despite all the hardships we're currently facing, it sounds like. So that's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing with us. Our closing words today come to us from Cheryl Block. As we go forward into this frightening, exhilarating, confusing, miraculous world, may we offer our comfort to the afflicted, our love to those who are lonely, and our wish for all to be safe. We'll extinguish our chalice today with some familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold with us until we meet again. Thank you again for joining us this morning. We'll now open things up to allow for any questions for our guests or for the sharing of thoughts about today's services, or possibly any announcements that anyone has. Please feel free to unmute yourself to speak. But again, out of consideration, please remain muted if you are not actively speaking, as this will allow those who are speaking to be heard clearly.
I just muted you, Jen. Sorry.
John, we were going to have that site assessment right when all this started, or do you want to still continue with that?
Sure. Matt, I don't know how that is going to work, but yes.
Yeah, now that we're coming out of social distancing, isolation, stage 1, stage 2, whatever stage we're in, we can do some site assessments. So if that's something that you all are still interested in, I can reach out to the Lower Shore Land Trust and we'll get the ball rolling. I'll start a group email and we can try to find a date and time that would work for that.
Good, thanks.
Mm-hmm.